see. Okay, so this was your first time with Nietzsche. So let's get an idea of how you experienced reading Nietzsche. So let's see. Anybody? Let's start with the haters, and then we'll go to the lovers. Any haters of Nietzsche in the classroom who wants to get it out? No haters. Ah, you're on the screen, but or should I do it? Let's see. Well, all right. Any lovers of Nietzsche? Let's see if there's anybody. Okay, Wozniak, go ahead. You can talk.
Oh, I mean, love is a strong word, I guess. I liked him. I liked him a lot. Yeah.
Why?
But why? Well, I think because he was the first, like, not really religious text that we read, and it's
Finally, yes.
I don't know. I think he's engaging with like the German philosophical, like, is it the Frankfurt School or something like that? Like Schopenhauer and engaging with Plato and things like that, as opposed to, I guess, spirituality, although that is part of spirituality.
Right, very good. Yes, he's the first atheist of our group of philosophers, mostly because most people, atheism wasn't a thing before the 18th or 19th century, right, or 17th century. So most people were religious, and then around the 16th century, the shift begins, right? So now we're going to get a lot more secular-minded philosophers, right? And Nietzsche is our first one. Very good, Wozniak. Anything else that Wozniak or someone else wants to add? Why they loved Nietzsche or liked Nietzsche? Or any questions you have or concerns about his philosophy? Let's do a little brainstorming before I start teaching. Anybody else? I thought I saw two hands come up at one point. Who was the second one? All right, that's it. No other comments? Cosmidis. Oh, go ahead, Wozniak, and then I will take Cosmidis.
I was curious as to like why was there not like what we consider like Gothic art back then, because he was saying like man only appreciates art in so much as it represents himself, and like in a beautiful way. So was there not like ugly art, like I guess if you think of like Tim Burton or something like that, like what, did that not exist?
No, that came in the early 20th century.
Wow, really?
Everything was very, with the Impressionists, right? They're the ones who start to blur the what do you say, the form, and then little by little art becomes more expressionistic, more abstract. So that was really in the 20th century with the world wars, right? People their minds start to explode. But before that, and during Nietzsche's time, everything was always pure representation of what the human being looks like. There's no attempt to go beyond the form that you see. So yeah, that comes later. Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Cosmidis, you have a hand. What do you want to say?
I like Nietzsche. It was good. I think it was a little bit more difficult to read than some of the other, all of the other works that we've read for some reason, even though like the language is quite like simple, I would say, even like modern, the way we speak now. I don't know, it just felt a little bit more, it felt a little like less clear. So I wasn't clear about when he talked about the piece of soul. That was what I was just really confused. I thought it was interesting that he would make a comparison saying that, you know, there is no desire for that piece of soul that's so alien to us, but then goes on to list all the things piece of soul could possibly mean, and then conclude that by saying, but we don't really know.
Yeah,
so
exactly. Yeah.
How can you say that you desire something? You don't desire something, but you don't know what it is.
Yeah, so in general, right, we'll see that in the next lecture, right, when Nietzsche is going to talk about the whole arsenal of Christianity, which is God, the angels, the soul, immortality, and he's going to really shed doubt that any of these things even exist, right? So, and for him, the soul is just another way to escape reality, right? Remember, that's his big issue with Christianity, this way of always trying to build alternative universes that are better than this one, right? So the soul is still another way that we're escaping life, right? So that's why he would be quite ambiguous with that concept. Does that answer your question a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay, good, good, good. All right, let's get into the text. I'm going to look at two things. I'm going to put it on the chat for everybody. So I'm going to first look at, well, I'm first going to introduce a little bit and remind us of what we were talking about before. Then we're going to talk about the destruction of the passions. And then number 3, I'm going to look at the spiritualization of the passions. Okay, so this is the plan for today. Oh, and one more thing, the last part, I will respond to Nietzsche actually by going back to the Gospels for and responding from the Christian point of view. So today we're not only going to explore Nietzsche's criticism of Christianity, but I want to also begin to respond to Nietzsche, right? It's important, remember that what I said about Nietzsche, especially for those of us who have a religious background, right? Nietzsche is a rite of passage. He's asking the right questions. Maybe the tone isn't the right tone for some of us. Maybe we're a little annoyed, but the questions are authentic, they're sincere, and they must be addressed, right? They must be recognized and they must be addressed and responded to. So I'm going to attempt today to respond to Nietzsche from the Gospels. And the next time I will also begin to respond to Nietzsche, but from a more philosophical perspective. We'll be opening up on Marcel and Levinas that we're going to study next, right? They are going to also respond to Nietzsche. Okay, so let's remember a little bit what we were talking about last time, right? So if you remember, what we're going to see this time and next time are the two main criticisms that Nietzsche has against Christianity. The first criticism has to do with the destruction of the passions, right? I'm writing it down on the chat. And so this is what he calls the nihilism of Christianity. So let me type this up so you have the vocabulary. Nihilism of Christianity. And then the second thing we're going to look at is the delusional character of Christianity. That's next time, right? The way that Christianity, according to Nietzsche, invents alternate realities, right? It's always creating alternate worlds, alternate realities, which are supposed to be better than this one. And this is also a form of nihilism, according to Nietzsche, right? So, all right, so today he's going to attack Christianity on one particular point, on Christianity's perspectives on the passions. Okay, so let me write this down because this is the key concept, the passions, right? This is what we're going to look at today. This is what Christianity is going to criticize, and this is what Nietzsche is going to try to salvage out of the grip, the nihilistic grip of Christianity, right? So before we go into the text, let me summarize briefly, right, what Nietzsche is saying here. I'm going to be looking mostly at page 53. So you can already begin to turn there. I'm going to look at, 52. So I'll be on page 52 the whole time. I'm going to just look at his, this section 1 called Morality as Anti-Nature. So you can already turn to page 52. And I'm going to first summarize what he's saying here, and then we'll go line by line and look at the quotes and elaborate a little bit, right? In essence, he's going to criticize Christianity on its approach towards the passions, right? Now we have to figure out what are these passions, right? And so we have to do this first. What is a passion? And why does Christianity hate it so much, right? So that's the first thing we'll do. That's the first thing the text talks about. And then Nietzsche is going to propose, after having bashed Christianity to death on its perspective on the passions, Nietzsche is actually for once going to be constructive. He's going to propose a different path to the one that Christianity has taken with regards to these overwhelming passions. And we're going to look at this. This is the path of the spiritualization of passion. And we're going to see 3 ways that Nietzsche proposes that we deal with the passions, which for him is a much more healthy way to approach these overwhelming emotions, which can sometimes be destructive, right? So these are the 2 sections of this text that is also outlined in the order of what we're going to talk about today. Okay, so are you ready? Shall we go to page 52? Let's begin. Look at the top. There is a time with all passions. Who is there? Just say yes if you're there. I don't hear anything.
Yes.
Okay, good, very good. All right, thank you. All right, so let's read together. So here actually Nietzsche is going to begin on the same starting point as Christianity. He's going to agree with Christianity that there is a time with all passions when they are merely fatalities. So what is a fatality? Fatality is death, fatal, right? Something that is deadly. So he's going to say, yes, passions can be deadly. He agrees with Christianity that our passions can be dangerous, right? When they drag their victim down with the weight of their folly. Right? So he says, yes, he agrees with Christianity that yes, they can be deadly. Where he doesn't agree is what Christianity does with these passions. Okay, so let's remind ourselves before we go further, what are these passions? What does Nietzsche mean by passion? And you can actually go to what passion means in its Latin etymology, right? Passion is coming from the Latin passio, which means what? Think of other words connected with the word passion in the English language, and you'll get an idea of what is a passion. So, what's another word that sounds just like passion, but it's a different word in the English language? See if you can figure it out. Can't hear you, parents. Okay, passionate, yes, thank you, Rivera. Another one. Passage, oh, not fashion, no Cartella. You're making poetry with us, Cartella, you're rhyming. Passive, very good, Wozniak, passive, okay? So remember this, passion is coming from the word passivity, meaning when you're experiencing a passion, you're passive, you're overwhelmed, you don't control it. So we can define passion in that sense as an overwhelming emotion towards which we are passive, right? We don't have control. Write this down, right? There's no control. We can't control it, right? So these are overwhelming emotions which take possession of us. We don't have control over them. Give me a list. We talked about it last time. What is a list of some of these passions, at least as the church has listed a group of these passions. It has, yes, right? The 7 mortal sins, it calls it, right? The 7 mortal sins. So the church, right, immediately gives a negative twist to these passions and calls them sins. But for Nietzsche, why? These are just natural forces that take possession of us. Why should they be right away negative, right? So what are the 7 mortal sins? Tell me.
Gluttony, envy, sloth, lust, pride, wrath, and greed.
Yes, very good. Good, some good Catholic upbringing here. Okay, very good. Yes, is that 7? Did I write down 7? Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, very good. Okay, so these are all overwhelming passions or desires that we have. For example, sometimes we have an appetite that is uncontrollable. We have to eat or drink, right? Or envy. We uncontrollably desire something someone else has, or we uncontrollably want to just do nothing, or we desire someone. Or we have overwhelming sense of, I need to defend myself and maintain my dignity, pride, right? Or we're overwhelmingly angry or desire, right? So these are things that take over. Now, so Nietzsche agrees, right, with Christianity that these passions, these strong emotions can destroy us if they are out of control. But he disagrees with the approach, right? So let's see how Christianity deals with these overwhelming desires, which Nietzsche says these are just natural part of what it means to be human. Why do we demonize this? This is really his issue. Okay, so let's go to the text, page 52. And go 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth line from the top. Formerly one made war. If you're there, say yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, so this is the approach, right, of Christianity. Formerly, one made war on passion itself on account of the folly inherent in it. One conspired for its extermination. All the old moral monsters are unanimous that il faut tuer les passions. We have to kill the passions. This is most philosophers, right, from the 17th and 18th century actually are aligned with Christianity. They agree with the Christian view that passions should be destroyed or killed. And then he goes to the New Testament, right? The New Testament, which is the Christian Bible. And there he says the most famous formula for doing this is contained in the New Testament, in the Sermon on the Mount, which, by the way, where, by the way, things are not at all regarded from a lofty standpoint. And then he quotes a section from that sermon. If thy eye offend thee, pluck it out. Fortunately, no Christian follows this prescription, right? Now make sure you underline this: to exterminate the passions and desires, merely to do away with their folly. This itself seems to us today merely an acute form of folly. So he's criticizing this, right? He's saying the fact that Christianity wants to destroy the passions just because they're dangerous, it just cuts them off. This for him is the craziest thing of all, right? So we're familiar a little bit, right? Oh, sorry, Wozniak. Yes, you might have the wrong edition. Go to the section in your book called Morality as Anti-Nature. And it's really after the problem of Socrates. It's the second chapter after that. And it's called Morality as Anti-Nature, and it's section 1. So you can go there. All right, so we have seen, right, you're welcome. We have seen how Christianity has been afraid of these passions. And so does anybody know what Christianity has decided to do? In other words, what is the highest ideal in Christianity of living life? If you look at the hierarchy of who is the holiest person in Christianity, what kind of life do they have according, well, if you're familiar. So you have the church members, right? And then who do you have?
Clergy.
The clergy, and then beyond that you even have a higher level, the priests, right? So now the priests, the pulpit, or if you want to go even further, you have the monastery with the monks, right? Now these are the holiest, with the monks and the nuns, which is kind of, the priesthood is kind of like that too, but the priesthood is still involved in the world, right? Monks are completely withdrawn. Now, this is the highest level, right? And in a monastery, you have a very, very strict life, which in a way, the goal is to eradicate the passions. And so you take a vow of chastity, a vow of humility, a vow of poverty. Anything that goes against your greed, your lust, is going to be, right? So Nietzsche, to a certain degree, to be honest, is correct in his analysis of Christianity and the way that Christianity has said, yes, the highest level of life is having no passions, no desires, is sacrificing all of those desires and being humble and chaste and poor and so forth, right? So to a very great degree, he's right in his criticism, right? Now we need to figure out, however, what is the big problem with this, right? And Nietzsche says this here. So he continues. Go to the same place, page 52. I'm just continuing where we left off. We no longer admire dentists who pull out the teeth to stop them hurting. On the other hand, it is only fair to admit that on the soil out of which Christianity grew, the concept spiritualization of passion could not possibly be conceived. Okay, so we'll talk in a second about this spiritualization, right? But for now, we know that in the Christian context, the passions were simply meant to be exterminated and destroyed. Now, here's the problem that Nietzsche has with this, which is not so much in this text, but which is everywhere else in his philosophy. The main issue, and make sure you write this down, with his the main point he's making in his criticism is that Christianity is not just attacking the human experience, right? Because this is fun. So number one, right? That's the first problem. Christianity is attacking the human experience and saying we are inherently evil. there's nothing more human than to be possessed by these passions, right? This is part of what it means to be human. And so the first attack of Christianity is, first of all, on the embodied character of humanity. Let me say this, let me write this down, right? The embodied character of our humanity, right? In other words, Christianity is really taking an aim at a fundamental human experience and immediately demonizing it. And Nietzsche, that's Nietzsche's first problem. He's saying, why are we demonizing this fundamentally human experience? Maybe there's something good about this. Maybe this is important. Maybe this is a path to something higher, these passions. Why are we immediately demonizing them, right? Now, the main issue with Nietzsche in the criticism is not so much that Christianity is going against what it means to be human, but also is going against life itself. Now let's analyze what that means, right? What is the connection between having a passion and life? Does anybody know? What is the connection when you are overtaken by a strong desire? What's the connection between that and life itself? Does anybody know?
Is it that life itself, it's kind of like you have tunnel vision, so that life around you completely disappears in a way, you're just stuck into that kind of thing, it's like you lose control?
That's interesting. I was going to say the opposite, but you're right too. When a passion becomes overwhelming, yes, boom, you only see that. But when a passion is just a passion, when you have all of the passions all the time, what is its connection with the life? Yes, Chase, very good, right? Passion is what I would call the way that life calls to us. Okay, let me write this down, right? When you have a passion, what is happening is life is calling to you to move out of yourself towards something in life, right? Is the way that life calls us out of ourselves. Okay, so in a way, a passion is life calling us, right? For example, you have passion of anger. This is life calling you to do something about something, right? You have passion of greed. This is life calling out to you to go and get this, right? Or you have the passion of sloth, right? Or laziness, life calling you to rest, right? Or passion of lust, again, life calling you towards another human being. Does that make sense? Am I making sense? So a passion is really an opening up towards life. It's really a way for us to move beyond our small, narrow worlds into life itself and to really embrace life, enter life, take a leap into life, engage with life, right? And so what is happening when we are destroying the passions? What is Christianity really doing according to Nietzsche? What do you think? If the passion is a gateway into life and you destroy the passions, what exactly? You're killing not only our livelihood, exactly, the spark of life. We are in a way snuffing out, and Chase is saying, snuffing out the spark of life. We are in a way cutting ourselves off from life, right? And of course, this is source of pain, right? Like Rahman is saying, suffering, right? So that's what Nietzsche is saying, is why are we constantly cutting ourselves off from life? What is so scary about life that we need to constantly have this kind of, the space suit, right? That we're wearing all day long so we don't come into contact with life. Now, you should have an echo here with another text that we studied, which had a similar approach towards life. The protagonist had a similar fear of life. Remember which one it is? Yes, explain, Tyler Rivera. Why do you say the book of Job? Remind us. Oh, Rivera is shy. Who wants to explain for Rivera? He just guessed. Okay. So you guessed correctly. So why do we find the same thing in the book of Job that I just talked about? This refusal to live, this fear of life, this refusal to enter life.
Wasn't Job kind of living a mechanical way, right? He was existing and not living, in a sense, right? He was just doing what he thought was the best thing to do and forgetting about himself.
Exactly, right? Remember, Job was walking on eggshells. He was constantly living a very narrow, scripted life, right? In order to, for sure, not encounter suffering or death. He was afraid of everything, right? He's constantly making sure he's offering the right sacrifices so he doesn't suffer. And what is the invitation of God to Job that we see in God's speech? Let's see if you remember. What is God inviting Job to do in his speech to him? Yes, very good, Cosmidis. Sosa says the story of the cave. Yes, this is the same idea in Plato, right? Leaving the cave. And Cosmidis responded, right, to enter life, right? And Arshad is saying, connecting with humanity, very good, guide him how life works, absolutely, right? So to trust him, right? God is inviting Job, enter life, stop being so afraid, right? Life is wild, it's uncontrollable, it's scary, but it's life, it's where you should be, right? Stop being so afraid. So this is the same thing, right? Christianity in a way is acting out how Job was. The same thing, right? The same mentality of fear of life and cocooning ourselves in certain rituals and prescriptions to protect ourselves. And both Nietzsche and God, right? In a way, they're saying the same thing, are saying, stop, enter, don't be afraid, live, right? Okay, so our passions is really the way that life calls to us, and to follow our passions is really to enter life, is really to embrace life. Okay, so make sure you write this down, right? Our passions is the way that life calls to us, and to follow our passions, not to be overwhelmed, right, by them, but to follow them, to listen to them, is to allow ourselves to move beyond the small, narrow space of our existence into the wider space of life itself, right? Passions are invitations from life, right? They're not to be seen as something negative for Nietzsche. They're positive. They're invitations from life to move towards this or that. Okay, what should I repeat? All right, so let me say it again. A passion is an invitation from life to move beyond ourselves into some kind of action, right? Life is pushing us through anger, through lust, through greed, through jealousy. These are considered to be negative, but Nietzsche is saying, no, this is life inviting us, calling us to move beyond ourselves into life itself, right? Okay, so, good. Yes. All right. So you see how Nietzsche is reformulating it, right? He's saying, so versus Christianity, which says all these passions are evil, they're part of our corrupt nature, our sinful nature, we should crush them. Nietzsche is saying, no, these passions are good. They're invitations from life, and to listen to these passions is in a way to enter into life, is to really surrender to life, right? Nietzsche has beautiful passages on, I deal with it in another class, but on happiness, right? And he says, so I'll just say a few words on that, right? For Nietzsche, happiness is not to be comfortable and safe, right? Shielded from pain, shielded from suffering, shielded from whatever is going on out there. For him, happiness is experiencing life in the fullest. And that means not only the good moments, but the bad moments, not only the blissful moments, but the painful moments, not only the heights, but the depths also. So for him, happiness is really to have experienced life in all of its, terrifying beauty, right? Let me write this down, because this is really, right, the highest level of a human experience for Nietzsche is to experience life in its terrifying beauty, is to see all aspects of life as beautiful. The painful aspects have a certain kind of beauty. The blissful aspects are, of course, also beautiful. Everything about life is beautiful. We don't need to be afraid, and our passions are moving us into this beautiful dance of life, right? Okay, so now we understand a little more Nietzsche's frustration. What I want to do in the next few minutes is to respond to Nietzsche from the Christian standpoint. And we're going to understand a little bit, by the time I'm done with explaining and responding to Nietzsche, that really his criticism is addressed more to the Christianity that was taught by the church fathers than to the Christianity that the early Christian teachings, right? In other words, you have the very early Christian teachings from the mouth of Jesus, right? So let us do a little bit Christianity 101, right? The Christian Bible is divided into two sections, the Gospels, which are the 4 stories telling us about the life and teachings of Jesus. And then you have the epistles, which are the letters of one of the most prominent disciples of Jesus, called Paul, to the different churches in the Roman Empire. Okay, so these are the 2 main sections of the Christian Bible or the New Testament. You have the Gospels, which are 4 stories, 4 different accounts of the life and teachings of Jesus. And then you have the epistles. Epistle means letter. These are the letters of one of the most prominent disciples of Jesus, called Paul, to the different Christian communities, right? Now, it's important we know the distinction, because we're going to see when Christianity starts to shift in a problematic direction, because Christianity starts out with the Gospels, and I'm going to respond to Nietzsche from the Gospels. But then we're going to see, and make sure you write this down, that Christianity is going to begin to shift under the influence of Greek thought, right? In other words, Christianity starts out Jewish, right? Everybody knows that Christianity started out in the context of the Hebrew nation, in the context of Judaism. But then under the influence of Greek thought, it starts to move away, and it starts to move into this very problematic space that Nietzsche is then going to attack, right? Let's see, Rivera, yes, under the influence of Greek thought. So we're gonna see this, right? So however, Nietzsche's criticism is actually, in my view, applies more to later Christianity, once it has started to move away from its original teachings, once it starts to become influenced by Greek thought, it becomes vulnerable to the Nietzschean critique. But the original text in the Gospels actually is not vulnerable to the Nietzschean critique. It is able to, it's not happening what Nietzsche is saying there. Okay, so let's look at that. So I'm going to look at the Gospels. I really suggest you read at least one of them. There are 4 Gospels, right? Matthew, Luke, John, and Mark, right? So Mark, sorry, with a K, I don't know. Mark with a C, with a K, I think. Okay, and I'm going to take a story. I'm going to respond to Nietzsche with one of the earliest stories of the life and teachings of Jesus, found in the Gospel of John, right? Anybody remember the very first miracle that Jesus performs in the Gospel of John?
Is it water to wine?
Yes. Okay, so let's talk about this a little bit, right? So first of all, if you read the Gospels, you're going and you really study the life of Jesus, and also you study his personality, there is actually no one as passionate as Jesus, right? He's an extremely passionate person. He can be incredibly joyful, incredibly angry. We've seen moments in the Gospels where he's enraged, right? He has moments where he is actually called a sloth by the teachers, right? In the region, he's actually considered to be lazy. There are moments where he's actually also accused of being too much with women, right? All of these passions are really vibrating inside this person, right? But the first miracle is very interesting, because it really goes against everything that the whole vision that Nietzsche has given us of Christianity is dismantled in this first miracle. So story goes like this. This is very early. Jesus is not yet known. Has just found a few disciples. He's still, incognito. Nobody knows who he is, and he happens to be invited to a wedding. And he's there kind of, hanging out with his friends, and his mother is in charge of the wedding. She's helping out. And at one point in the wedding, they run out of wine. Now this is the end. This is like if you had, I don't know, a Latino wedding which runs out of music, okay? It's like, it's over, right? There's no party left, right? So you're running out of wine. Is first of all, the party's over. Second of all, you look really bad. You look inhospitable. You look like you're stingy. You look disorganized. Your reputation is ruined. And so it's a really big deal. And so the mother of Jesus, who is part of the organizing committee, is very worried. So she comes to Jesus and she's like, son, they have no wine. And Jesus looks at her and he's like, so how does this concern me? Why? What does this have to do with me? And she doesn't respond. Instead, she turns to the servants and she tells them, whatever he tells you to do, you will do. So now Jesus is kind of, okay, he has to do something now. So he turns to the servants and he says, okay, what do you have? You don't have wine, but what do you have? And they tell him, well, we have these huge jars of water outside in the courtyard, which are used to normally, take a shower, purify, the body, whatever. And Jesus is like, okay, fine. Take those big jars of water and bring them into the banquet and begin pouring into the cups of your guests. And they're like, what? This is ridiculous. What's going to happen? But they were told to do, so they do. They take the big jars, they enter the wedding banquet, they start pouring. And what comes out? Anybody can guess? Wine, yes. Very good, right? So the water which is being poured out, actually, as it is being poured out, it's turning into wine. So it's one of the most poetic stories, right, in the Gospels. So now, what does this tell you about the personality of Jesus, what kind of person he is, and what does it tell you? How would you respond to Nietzsche based on this particular story, right? Nietzsche, who says Christianity is against the passions, right? Okay, yes, everybody getting lit, like Cosmides is saying. What does this tell you about Jesus? What kind of person is he? Is he somebody who's against the passions? Is he somebody who's despises human passions, human desires? He likes his bubblies, yes. He likes to drink. What else does he like? So we see clearly he's on the side of wine, is a person who's aligned and in tune with his passions. Very good. He wants everyone to have fun. What is the context? What's a wedding? What does a wedding celebrate? Love, right? Union, sexuality. So we have almost all of them. We have the sexual desire. We have gluttony. We have the sloth, right? We don't have wrath, it's true. We don't have anger in the story, but we certainly have a celebration of human passion, a celebration of the human desire to have fun, to eat, to drink, to be, to have sexual relations, to have union, to have love. So this first particular miracle is a celebration of our passions. Not only that, it's a response to a desire, right? The mother of Jesus comes to Jesus and says, we need some wine. Here's a desire. And Jesus, what does he do? Does he ignore her desire? Does she tell her, woman, control yourself. You shouldn't be having these nasty desires in my presence. What does he do towards the desire that his mother expresses? So he delivers, right? He fulfills it. Okay, so now this is really interesting, right? Because actually this is not the only time. Every time, most of the time, most of the stories in the Gospels, right? And this is before you get to the writings of Paul, is really the story of human desires. Different human beings come to Jesus with certain desires: desire for healing, desire for forgiveness, desire for peace, desire for life, desire for fun, like here in this case, right? And what does Jesus do towards those desires? Does he say, oh, human beings, you need to control these desires here. You need to rise above this. You need to, just believe, don't have the, no. He responds, right? In other words, we have in these stories an image. Exactly, very good, Tyler Rivera, right? When the people are lacking in bread, they're hungry, he feeds them with bread and fish, and so forth, right? So we have actually, in the Gospels at least, right? Later things will shift, but in the Gospels, we have a vision of God as the one who doesn't tell you, go and control these desires, but on the contrary, of a God who responds to human desire. Okay, so make sure you write this down, right? So in these stories, we have a vision of God which is different from the one that Nietzsche is giving us here, right? We have a vision of God who doesn't he doesn't despise human desire. Far to the contrary, he responds to human desire and offers, right, what the person longs for, right? So this is the first thing we learn, right, from the Gospels. Make sure you write this down. And the first thing we see, actually, we have several things. The first thing that we saw is a celebration of desire, right? In the story that I just told you, celebration of human passions. That's the first thing. Second thing we see as we begin to read more stories about Jesus, his life and his teachings, we see Jesus as responding to human desire rather than ignoring or repressing human desire, right? So I'm writing this down for you, right? So we have a vision of God as the one who responds to desire rather than crushes it, right? And finally, what we see, and this is the most interesting part in my view, right? In the Gospels, right, you have lots of human beings, lots of people who have a desire, and this brings them to Jesus, right? The desire propels them, right? If it's a desire for healing or a desire for food or a desire, propels them to Jesus. So what does this tell us about desire and the spiritual journey? What do we learn from these stories about where human desire can lead us? To God, very good, right? Oh, this is Chase, right? So absolutely, right? What we're seeing here is that instead of our desires being the sign of our sinful natures, right? Instead of our desires being the symptom of our corrupted, fallen, sinful nature, according to the Gospels, human desire can become a path to God. This is what moves you out of yourself towards not only life, but possibly God himself, right? Our desires can become the beginning of the spiritual journey. They are the ones which in a way, push us onto the journey or the path to God. So this is the last point that we can get. Yes, Rivera, I'll come back to this Greek thought of moderation. So last point about our passions, right? Our passions or desires can become a path to God instead of a path away from God, right? So we see in the Gospels completely different perspective, right? On the passions, on desires. There's a celebration of passion. There's responding to passion, and there's passion as being seen as the beginning of the spiritual journey, right? Completely different, right? Now, so then what happens, right? Is Nietzsche, who is he criticizing? Certainly not the Gospels, right? So where do things begin to shift? And this is where I will respond. Yes, Rivera, very good. But even before Catholicism, in the epistles of Paul, you begin to have this vision of, and with Paul, it's very clear when he talks about the conflict between the flesh and the spirit, right? When Paul is saying we have a flesh, sinful nature, and then we have spiritual nature, and these are in conflict, and we need to, leave behind the flesh, leave behind the sinful nature, become more spiritual. Paul is not talking like Jesus anymore. Right? He's not talking like the Gospels anymore. Who is he sounding like when he says the flesh we need to reject and the spirit we need to follow? Who does he sound like? In people that you know as philosophers.
Rumi?
Yes, he does sound like Rumi, but before Rumi, not Joe Rivera, not this time. Let's see, what does Chase say? It's true and published about me. It's true, Maimonides. Yes, I'm thinking of the Greek thought because we are in the Greek context. Remember, Jesus walked the earth during the time of the Greek influence was at its highest. It was the Roman Empire, but the worldview was Greek. Who is the philosopher in Greek thought which talks about the flesh versus the spirit?
Aristotle?
Plato. Aristotle is a little more embodied, right? Aristotle is more of a pragmatic, a scientist, but Plato is the one, remember, who distinguishes between two realms. I keep on drawing this for you, right? You have, remember the 8 that I drew on the board, right? You have the spiritual realm, the material realm, and we have to leave behind the material. This is the story of the cave, right? That I told you. This is then, of course, Rumi, Maimonides, follow everybody, right? And this is really the influence of Greek thought, where little by little Christianity starts to dissociate the human flesh embodied experience from spiritual experience, right? But this is not what you find in the early Gospels, right? In the early Gospels, you have people who come, flesh and blood people who come with desires, with embodied desires for healing, for peace, for food, for wine, right? And this is celebrated by Jesus. But when Paul arrives on the scene, and remember, he was not only, you have to know a little bit about Paul, he had a kind of a dual citizenship. He was both a Roman citizen and a Jewish citizen. So he was well-versed with the Bible, but also very well-versed with Greek thought, with Roman thought. So his mind is a hybrid mind, right? And so his writings are heavily influenced by this Greek, what we call the Greek dualistic thinking, right? Which is the thinking where the body and the soul are different substances. The body is bad, the soul is good, the body needs to be done away with, the soul is all that remains and all that matters. You don't have this in the Gospels, right? This kind of, and little by little, right? If you continue under the influence of Greek thought, the church fathers continue this idea that the body is bad, the body is full of sin, the body is corrupt, the flesh is weak, and we need to rise above the body and the flesh and become more spiritual, right? This is what Christianity became over the centuries, not under the influence of Jesus, but under the influence of Plato. So Christianity actually became Plato. This is really true and very sad, right? Originally, you have this celebration of desire, this loving approach to the human body, right? Jesus is someone who touches human beings, who heals human beings, who feeds human beings, who quenches the thirst, right? The body is something that is lovingly approached by Jesus, right? But with Plato, the body becomes the enemy. And slowly Christianity starts to adopt this Platonic view of the world. The body is evil and corrupt. We need to neglect it and we need to repress it and castrate it. And the soul is all that really matters. Do you follow me, everybody? Anybody has a question as to what I'm saying? So in essence, right, if what I'm saying is true, what Nietzsche is criticizing really is not so much Christianity as Platonism, as the Platonism that has permeated or infiltrated Christianity, right? Let me write this down. So what Nietzsche is criticizing is not so much Christianity as Platonism infiltrating into Christianity, right? This is really what Nietzsche is criticizing, because when you go to the early texts of Christianity, to the early accounts of the life and teachings of Jesus, you don't have this hatred of the body, right? You don't have this indifference or repression of desire. You have the opposite, right? And so it's slowly, as Christianity becomes more and more Greek, more and more Platonic, that you have this rift that is created between the body and the soul, and that is truly what Nietzsche is criticizing, right? So this was my response, right, to Nietzsche from a Christian context, that Nietzsche would do well to explore the early texts, right, and perhaps would find some resonance with the life and teachings of Jesus. Actually, Nietzsche himself is familiar with these texts, and you have in many other of his works, you have he mentions Jesus, and you can sense he admires, right, this personality. What he doesn't admire is what Christians have done with Jesus. What he doesn't admire is the whole edifice and institution of Christianity, which has become very heavily influenced by Platonism. But you have a lot of interesting texts in Nietzsche about Jesus, where you can sense that he has some admiration, or he's intrigued by the figure and the personality of Jesus, right? Okay, So now we have like 1 minute left where we're going to go into Nietzsche's response, right? So let's read together. So leaving aside the Gospels, right? Let's see how Nietzsche will deal with the passions. What does he propose? So go with me to the end of this page, page 52, and you're going to count from the bottom 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It never asks, how can one spiritualize? Who is there? Say yes if you're there.
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, so now he's going to give us his approach, right? He never asks, or it never asks, how can one spiritualize, beautify, deify a desire? So this is actually Nietzsche's path, right? Towards our passions, right? So he talks about spiritualize, beautify. I'm going to go a little bit over. So like 5 minutes, I hope you don't mind. I'm going to go a little bit over just to talk about this. Okay, so here now we're going to understand. So Nietzsche agrees, the passions, I mean, he does view the passions as gateways into life, but he realizes the passion, when it becomes too strong and too obsessive, can become the gateway to death, right? If you're too overwhelmed by greed or too overwhelmed by anger or lust, that can kill you. So he agrees with that, right? So, but he doesn't want to exterminate or castrate the passion. So he proposes another path, and these are the 3 possible approaches we can have to our passions so they don't destroy us, right? So spiritualize, beautify, deify. So let's look at the first one. What would it mean to spiritualize a passion? So suppose you're super lustful or you're super angry person. How would you spiritualize this passion? I'm waiting for you. What does it mean to spiritualize? Make it a lifestyle. So, well, let's stop and try to figure out then more clearly. What does it mean to spiritualize? From the word is spiritual, to make a passion spiritual. So Chase says maybe becoming a public advocate. Okay. So if you're lustful, do you think it's going to help to become a public advocate? Is that going to help your? Okay, Perez, a deeper connection. Okay, so you're on the right track, Perez. You're on the right track. Let's take someone who's super angry. Let's start with an easy one. So you're an angry person. Everything pisses you off. How can you make this spiritual? In other words, how can you elevate this passion into something lofty? Yes, very good, Caratella, right? You use the passion, you channel it in a positive way, you elevate it. So if you're a very angry person, how could you become how could you elevate this anger? What would be ways? Opening up a gym for the like-minded. Very good. Yes, you could start opening up a gym for all the angry people in your neighborhood, right? That's a way to, what's THC? Yes, well then no, because that would subdue the passion. We don't want that, right? This is the Christian approach. We want it to be still alive, right? What's CBD now? Anybody know what is CBD from Chase?
It's cannabis without the THC.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, why would I'm still seeing an attempt to subdue the passion. Why would you want to? No, Nietzsche wants the passion to overflow, but to flow into a certain direction. The weed is simply numbing you a little, even, and without the THC is what's the point? so yes, the class took a sharp turn to the right. You guys are really bored at home, aren't you? Maybe you should take it out in a way where it doesn't harm it. Exactly, right? You want to channel your passion into like a cause, into something. Thank you, Pende. Yes, you want to channel your passion of anger into something that is constructive, right? A cause or art. Yes, you can write an angry letter and don't mail it. That would be good too, right? But you want the passion to become the fuel for something better. You see what I mean? So the angry letter, you're just closing up, you're locking up your passion. That's not good. You want the passion to flow still, but to flow in a direction which is constructive, which is life-giving, like the gym example, right? From, yes, you're converting it. You're you're channeling it. You have this big wave of passion. You're finding a direction for your passion, right? You can become a politician. You can become even a medical doctor. You can become a soldier. You can whatever, right? That will channel this. This is the way you can spiritualize the passion, right? Any questions on this first one? That's the first thing you can do with your overwhelming passions. The same with lust, right? Suppose you're very all the time you're attracted left and right. How could you spiritualize your passion? Let's try this one. This is a useful question. How does one spiritualize lust? Yes, very good, Chase. Becoming a sex therapist or a sex guru, or you can get married, or you can find somebody to do this with, right? You can, there are many ways. Yes, Kama Sutra. Thank you, Karat. There are many ways that you can channel this passion into something elevated, right? You can opt for a committed relationship. That's a way to elevate your passion. Or you can do some Kama Sutra or tantric practices. That's another way to elevate, right? Or yoga. So you're getting the idea, right? Now the second one, to beautify, and then we'll quickly go to deify, but to beautify, to understand the second one, you have to remember what I told you in The Birth of Tragedy. Remember we talked about this text where he talks about art as the union of two forces. Does anybody remember what are the two forces that have to be unified for any good work of art?
Apollo and Dionysus.
Yes, Apollo and, I can't write Apollo. Is it 1P or? Yes.
1P, 2 L's.
Thank you. Okay, these are the two gods, right? Or the two forces that have to be united. Yes, 1P. Apollo, Dionysus. Now, who is Apollo again? What kind of force is that?
Like art. He's the god of like art and order.
So exactly, harmony, order, music, light, right? And then Dionysus, what kind of god he is?
Wine and parties and orgies and like disorder.
Very good. Okay, so you see these two forces, right? They are the two forces that come into any type of beauty, right? Now, knowing this, what does it mean to beautify a desire? See if you can get it. So remember, to make something beautiful, you bring these two forces together. All right, so now you have a desire, it's overwhelming. What does it mean to beautify your desire? Yes, Rivera, to perfect it, to find meaning. In other words, yes, create art, absolutely, right? Making it balanced. Okay, very good part. Let me explain, right? The passion is the Dionysian part. And what he's saying is you have to find a way to use it or to bring it into order and into harmony. In other words, what Nietzsche is proposing is the middle way. It's okay to have passions, but you have to have balance, right? You can have any passion, but you can't fall in the extremes. If you fall in the extremes, if you're too passionate or not enough passionate, it's not good, right? Too passionate is what? Which god?
Dionysus?
Dionysus, right. Not enough passion, who do you look like now?
Apollo?
Apollo, right? So Nietzsche is saying, no, they have to be together. So you can't have too much passion. You can't have zero passion. You have to have balance. Passion in a healthy way, right? So anytime you see you're overwhelmed with anger, or anytime you see you're never angry, both are bad, right? You want to be angry in a moderate, harmonious way. That's the way to beautify your passions. In other words, you can have your passions, but you have to bring them you have to be moderate about your passions. You can have any passion you want, lust, sloth, wrath, but has to be not too much, not too little. That's the path of beauty for Nietzsche. A passion is beautiful when it is exercised with moderation. It's ugly when it falls into the excess. If you're too lustful, you don't look good. If you're not lustful at all, you don't look good either. Nietzsche is saying your passion is going to be beautiful when it's just enough, right? A little bit lustful, just right? Or with anger, just enough, just right. Not too much, not too little. That's what he means by beautifying a passion, right? Bringing it into balance, bringing it into moderation. That's what it means to beautify a passion. It's not too much, it's not too little. Okay, now to deify. What does it mean to deify a passion? What does he mean by that? I'm almost done, I promise. 1 minute. Yes, what is to deify? What does that mean, to deify? To make like a god, yes. What does it mean to make your passion divine? What does that mean? Yes, what does it mean to give divinity to your passion? Very good, Chase. What does it mean? How is it different? Okay, what is Christianity doing to the passion? Is it giving it divinity? How does it see the passion? From which side is the passion coming? Almost to be dedicated, yes. Not to imprison it. I'll get there in a second to this notion of not imprisoning, but what does Christianity do to the passions? Does it make it, is the passion holy for Christianity? What does it say about passion?
It says it's carnal.
Yes, and is it good or bad?
It's bad.
Okay, very good. So Nietzsche is taking this opposite stance from Christianity, right? Christianity says the passion is from demons, right? It's demons in your soul, right? Nietzsche is saying, why? Why are we saying that? Why can't we say that the passion is divine? It's the divine spirit moving in me. It's life dancing in me, right? So you see how he's taking the opposite direction of Christianity, right? Christianity says passions, they're evil, they're sinful, they're coming from the demonic, satanic side. Nietzsche is saying, no, I'm going to say the opposite. Our passions are divine, they're holy, they're a sign, they're coming from God, they're God's spirit moving in us. This is what it means to deify the passion, is to celebrate our humanity, celebrate the human nature, celebrate these overwhelming forces which inhabit us, which for Nietzsche are divine forces, right? It is God that is moving in us when we feel these powerful desires. Let me say that again, right? Because this is very strange to Christian ears, right? It is God that is moving in us when we are and going through these powerful passions. It is actually the divine pulse in us that is making us feel these, right? So that's what Nietzsche means with deifying a passion. Okay, any questions on anything that I said before we part? Okay. All right, so tomorrow we're meeting. Don't forget, we're not meeting on Wednesday because that's already spring break. Yes, Zoom is safe to use. Why would it be safe to use, Pandey?
Oh, I don't know. They said they got hacked or something. So I don't know if it was safe.
Hasn't happened yet. They can hack, then they can listen to good lectures on Nietzsche. It's all good. I'm good with them hacking. Bring it on. Everybody should hear about philosophy. I want people to hack. Please give my address. Okay.
Oh, no.
Invite them. Have you posted the ID for the ID? It's the same, right? It's always the same invitation. The problem is I messed it up and I put in like a password or something, but you don't need it. I took it out. So you just put in the link and then you just put in, and if you have a phone, you have to put the meeting ID, but I took it out. It should work normally. Okay, so tomorrow we have a meeting, don't forget, same time, and you have another reading assignment. Oh shit, it shouldn't conflict because the whole CUNY system tomorrow is on a Wednesday schedule. So it shouldn't conflict. Right, exactly, yeah. Very good, okay. Yes, you can go. If anyone still has questions, you can stay behind as usual, and the rest of you can go.